and welcome to the Skift India Travel Podcast. As you know, here in this podcast, we dive into the latest trends and headlines shaping the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry in India. Today, joining me in this episode is my colleague Bulbul Dhawan, who's Skift's India reporter. Bulbul and I will be discussing some of the big stories that Skift has covered coming out from India in the past week. We will also be exploring significant developments from hotel expansions to shifts in travel preferences and market projections. Welcome, Bulbul.
Thank you, Peden.
Bulbul, let's begin with the story that you did last week about Hyatts' ambitious growth strategy in India. In your report, you mentioned that Hyatts CEO Mark Hoplamazian, during his recent visit to India, had highlighted the company's plan to double its presence in India. Of course, it has about 50 hotels across 17 markets already. And it not just wants to double the portfolio, but also expand to 28 markets to cater to the rising demand for diverse destinations in the country. And of course, one of the most interesting things that Hoplamazian talked about was concentrating on India's domestic leisure market. And make no mistake, he says very specifically domestic leisure market. Of course, his words definitely ring true. What were some of the other things that the Hyatt CEO said that made an impact on you, Bulbul?
Absolutely. Like you said, Hoplamazian is very bullish on the domestic leisure market in India. This is because he believes that the leisure market in India is primarily being driven by demand internally, as Indians are seeking out to explore more of the country. And like he said, there is a lot that India has to offer to visitors, even domestic visitors. Apart from that, another thing that he said, which stuck with me, was that this is a very positive time for hotels in India. As we know, the global East has a high barrier to entry, and the process of entering India has not been too easy in the past. But we now know that things are changing. India has allowed 100% foreign direct investment in tourism-related ventures. And as Hoplamazian also said, there is an increased interest in investments in hotels in India. So he is very interested and very positively looking at the India market. He also believes that India's demographic profile, economy, as well as spending power are the major factors contributing to the growth of the industry. Plus, he believes that the increasing and the improving operating performance of the hotels in terms of occupancy rates and room prices is a very positive trend. He believes that these performances are even enough to offset the high interest rate on capital needed to develop hotels. Apart from that, there is also a demand and supply gap, with supply perpetually and
Exactly.
significantly. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was about to come to. The fact that, Hoplamazian also talked about the fact that India is a very underpenetrated market.
Yes, absolutely, and I think he was very sure. I mean, this is true for the rest of the world as well. But in India, what with the operational performance being the way it is, and because it is not catered specifically by just Indian operators, we know US has a dominating US operators market, as explained by hoteliers previously, and same with China. India, on the other hand, does not. Is not very dominated merely by Indian operators. We have a lot of international players as well that are changing the way things work. And and then there is also, like, the supply is perpetually and significantly less than the demand, and that is a great attribute because that means that there is definitely a market that can be served.
Of course. Bulbul, you spoke about international hotel operators, in India. And also interesting was the fact that, the Accor chairman, Sebastian Bazin, talked about India's emerging middle class. You wrote that in your story as well. Accor is a major player in the Indian hospitality market, and it, attributed 90% of hotel success to demographic shifts and, of course, the expanding middle class. With India accounting for a quarter of the global increase in this segment, Accor is also strategically focusing on, its mid-scale and upscale travel markets. And I think currently it has about, you mentioned in the story that it has about 62 operational hotels in India, and 9 properties in its pipeline is supposedly planning to open this year. That surely is a small number, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is a very small number, and Bazin completely agrees. He believes that India has a lot of untapped potential because India has a very robust middle class that is contributing to the economy. It is full of youth. They have and their spending power is increasing, and in fact, in Basin's words, India has been taking the lead in terms of economy and is the fastest growing country in the world right now. But still, it is an untapped market. He also, in fact, gave us a parallel when he said that the top five hotel companies in India collectively have less than 1,000 operating hotels, and uh, compared to this, China, which has a similar population level, the top five hotel operators in China have 15,000 hotels. So we have a gap of less than 1,000 hotels and then 15,000 hotels. And that is essentially where he said we need to focus on how to go from 1,000 hotels to 15,000 hotels and not have to wait 15 years for it. Because according to him, 90% of the success of hotel companies is linked to demography and emerging middle class. And India has both of them.
Yeah.
Major gap.
Yeah, and we had a mega trend that said that India's middle class is going to drive global travel. A mega trend of ours has also talked about the increasing purchasing power among the Indian middle class and how it's growing and how it wants to spend more. And of course, it's because they are young as well.
Yes, and in fact, the Indian middle class right now currently accounts for 31% of the population. But by 2047, it is expected to account for 60% of our population, which is a significant increase, and that is the major market that needs to be catered to. And but still, we see that there are less than 200,000 branded hotel rooms in India, compared to 3 million unbranded keys uh, in India.
Yeah, I mean, so that definitely means that there is a lot of scope for hotels to kind of open more properties in India, and of course, perhaps that will also help with the price parity, and maybe that will bring down prices for hotels. And of course, if we look at the broader industry trends, India's travel and tourism sector is poised for substantial growth. Projections suggest a revenue surge from about 12 billion in 2023 to nearly 24 billion this year, with a further rise to 34.25 billion by 2028. The focus is, of course, shifting towards package holidays, which is projected to attract about 65 million travelers by 2028. Since you work on the Skift India report, Bulbul, you must be seeing some very ambitious projections. What do you make of them?
I think overall it is a great time to be a player in the Indian tourism industry. Hotels and package holidays are the biggest contributors to tourism revenue in India. And interestingly, if we see the data between 2017 and 2019 were the biggest contributor. But post pandemic, this changed and hotels were dominating the revenue till 2023. But according to projections, this is set to change again. And from this year onwards, package will become the biggest contributor to revenue, though hotels will continue to be the second largest contributors. And I think that is very interesting that hotels had this period of surge post pandemic. And to me, that indicates a trend of people just wanting to maybe relax away from home and stay somewhere else, like staycations. And we know that trend did come in India in between, where there were vacations and staycations. People just wanted to go out but did not want to move out of the hotels too much. But now they're back to wanting to explore destinations and undertake travel as the Indian population has always known it to be. And then another very positive aspect, I believe, is that during the 2024 financial year, which is between April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, the domestic air traffic has surpassed the pre-COVID levels, which is a significant progress. And this is even though, I mean, we know that the segment is highly underserved in India, which the Minister for Civil Aviation, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, has also said. So until recently, the internal areas of the country were largely not connected by air, but now we see that changing. Airports are coming up in these areas, and in fact, in a span of 2 years, we have also seen two regional airlines taking off. As you know, Akasa Air and Fly 91. Akasa, of course, is now also flying internationally, but they still aim to connect on a more regional level from the get-go. And apart from that, the Airports Authority of India is looking to infuse $3.6 billion dollars over the next 5 years to improve the airport infrastructure in India. And this gives us an indication for what lies ahead for the aviation sector in the country, and that it's poised for significant growth. The players are all aware of how underserved this segment is, because we know that so far most of the inland is connected through roads and railways, which are also being transformed. We see a lot of highways coming up, and we see innovation and more better railways coming up, better railways infrastructure coming up. There's the Vande Bharat and everything. And so they're also being improved, but that doesn't mean that the aviation sector is being left behind. It's the players are trying to catch up and serve these areas, the inland areas, which we also know are the areas that hotel companies are also trying to penetrate, because this is where a majority of people live. Out of 1.4 billion people in India, 1 billion stay in secondary and tertiary cities. So that the hotels are trying to penetrate, and so is the aviation sector.
Correct, Bulbul. And that was, of course, we know that domestically, India is one of the biggest markets globally for domestic travel. And we've seen that as well. But if we also talk about the outbound potential of India, recently, I did an article on how the Maldives Association of Travel Agents and Tour Operators is determined to revive Indian tourism following a recent decline. We know about the diplomatic spat that led to a significant drop in Indian arrivals. There was a boycott, hashtag boycott Maldives movement on social media. So Maldives has really lost out on Indian travelers. And, during the course of my story, I found out that arrivals have gone down by almost 40%. So I spoke to the president and the CEO of the association, and they told me that they are taking proactive steps, including road shows and influencer collaborations, to re-engage with Indian travelers. And they spoke about the fact that even though, and this is not because Maldives is doing really badly, that is why they want Indian travelers. In fact, both the people that I spoke to, they said that Maldives has been doing really well as a destination so far, in the last 3 months, January to March. But they know that there are certain sections of, travel businesses that have been affected adversely, that catered specifically to the India travel market. So they are very keen to win back Indian audiences, and but that's a story that everyone. Every destination wants to be part of the India story, and Maldives definitely needs Indian travelers, but so does the rest of the world. India is definitely a market that destinations can no longer ignore. You've been working on India stories for so long, and then you talked about your article also talked about how Thailand tourism is also looking at almost over 1.7 million arrivals from India this year. Um, just share, what you've found out so far among destinations, and of course, talk about the visa free, the visa-free stays that Indians are being granted across, destinations like Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and of course Thailand.
I think no one wants to miss out on the India story right now. Like you said, Maldives is definitely trying to get back the Indian tourists, I mean that makes sense, because Maldives has been one of the most popular leisure destinations for Indians. Its close proximity and, of course, the scenic beauty. It has been a very attractive honeymoon destination, especially for Indians. And of course, the the celebrities are always have also been historically known to go to Maldives for travel. So Maldives has been sort of that dream of Indian travelers for a really long time. And now after the spat, when that has gone down, I think, yeah, Maldives would definitely want the Indian travelers back in. But Maldives is not the only one. We know that Thailand, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka all are offering visa-free travel to Indians. And especially Thailand, which has its which offered a 6 month period where Indians could travel visa free, because they have this target that they want to achieve, like you said, of 1.7 million visitors this year. And in fact, when they announced that visa free travel, they also said that they might be looking at making that a permanent arrangement, which would work really well, because Thailand also is a very important leisure destination for Indian travelers. And then we have Malaysia, which is visa free for now. Explore Malaysia. And then Sri Lanka, of course, because of its close proximity, the largest, if not the largest, travel source market for Sri Lanka. But then, apart from that, we also have Saudi, which aims to make India its top source market. And
Yeah, of course. Saudi has such ambitious tourism numbers, right? I mean, like 150, 175 million visitors by 2030 is not easy. And of course, if you want those kind of numbers, which are the countries that you're going to look at? I mean, like countries that have the largest population, India, China, those will be your markets.
absolutely. In fact, they have a target of getting 7.5 million Indian visitors over the next 7 years, and so they're marketing themselves in India. They are tying up um, with players in India so that they can offer, so that they can market the things that they have to offer, and have partnerships with tour operators, event planners, and they've also simplified the visa process for Indian travelers. That they are offering e-visas and visa on arrival to certain segments, and I think that
Yes,
is.
and I think Saudi is also doing this great initiative of offering, if you are taking a transit flight via
Yes.
Saudi, then you get free stay and you also get free visa. So
Yes.
I mean, those are I mean, even destinations like Abu Dhabi are doing that.
Yeah, and in fact, Emirates recently offered like Indian travelers who are visiting to Dubai via Emirates get a visa on arrival, and they're just offering, like, the countries are offering different schemes that allow Indian travelers an ease of access, and I think that is because Indians, when they travel, they're not afraid to spend.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to spend, but every visa issue is rankling, because what's happening with Schengen visas. Because of
Yes.
Schengen visas, summer travel is facing some kind of a roadblock, because Schengen visas are not coming on time, and we
Oh
know
yeah.
what's happening with the US visas. Right, I mean, like a
Oh
waiting
yeah.
period of 300. I know that you are trying to get your own US visa as well, right? And we
Oh
know the
yeah,
waiting
I
period.
I oh yes, absolutely. I have an appointment scheduled for August next year.
Yes. And when was it that you had applied for your visa? That
I
was
think like 10 days ago.
yeah.
So
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 when you
yeah,
apply in April, you get an appointment for August 2025.
yeah, absolutely wonderful, and I don't know what to make of it. I mean, if someone has plans or someone has things that they need to get to, it makes the wait very interesting.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that India is a last minute booking market, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you expect Indians to plan their travel so much that in March 2024 they're going to decide that, oh, I'm going to go to the US in September 2025?
Oh, absolutely not. We are absolutely last minute planners, because we try to wait till the last moment before we do any bookings. We
Yes,
just want to be
exactly. So
sure that there is no
like
hurdle
losing
whatsoever.
out. Destinations are losing out by making the visa process so rigid, and
Yes. Yeah, but then
yeah.
we also know that the US is also trying to solve this issue. I don't know how they will make that happen, considering initially said
Yes.
that they've brought down that waiting period from 1,000 days to 300 days, but then I know that it's now like it's now 1.5 years. So
I mean,
it
like it's a hit and miss, right?
yeah.
I know many people who have stayed up late at night just to check whether they can whether there is an open slot that they can fill. So I mean, like, yeah, and there are, like, we use the word in India, jugaad. There's a lot of jugaad around it,
Yeah.
but essentially, I mean, like, it's still a tedious process, right?
Yes, it is a very tedious process. Once you get through the process of filing all the information that you need to filling out those forms, and then to find out the visa fees is hefty for people. At the end of the day, it is a
Exactly.
hefty fees,
It's
and then
not cheap. It's not cheap.
it's not cheap. And then when you find out that you would need to wait for such a long time that it might end up, uh, you know, getting the visa after what you need it for is done and away with, it's just it does put a damper on your plans, and it sort of feels a fruitless exercise at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like, but despite all the issues that we might have with visas and everything, if leisure market is the focus, Bulbul, the corporate travel business is also rebounding very strongly. Both of us have done articles on it. The Global Business Travel Association anticipates about an 18% surge in business travel spending this year, with India's business travel returning to pre-pandemic levels by 2025. And incentive trips are also regaining popularity, which is evidenced by a 30% increase in requests for such programs. And you and I have written articles talking about how prominent OTAs like Make My Trip, Clear Trip are all looking to make the most of the corporate travel crowd in India as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I recently worked on a story about online travel agencies and how they are catering to corporate travel, and the OTAs seem to be working overtime to cater to the market. We know that India has a large corporate travel base. In fact, if we see last year, India accounted for 28% of the MICE, that is meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions market in Thailand. And for South Africa also, India is among the largest contributors to incentive travel. Not just that, even on a domestic scale, India is trying to push MICE. There's an infrastructural push, what with the development of Geo Convention Center and the Bharat Mandapam, where the G20 Leadership Summit has taken place, and the Yashobhumi Convention Center in Dwarka. So we know that corporate travel, outbound corporate travel, is a major aspect in India, and there's also a push for it in India itself. And so we do see a parallel in effort from OTAs. In fact, this month itself, Dubai-based business travel platform Tomorrow entered India because India accounts for almost 6% of business travel in Central Asia and the Pacific, the platform said. So yeah, that is a major that is a significant portion, and they do believe that India has a lot to offer. And Tomorrow is not the only one. ClearTrip has launched a corporate travel booking tool called Out of Office, uh, even though it has previously essentially catered to the leisure market. So that shows that OTAs are actually going sort of pivoting towards this market, even though their primary offerings may be to the leisure market. And Make My Trip also has its offering called My Biz, and that caters to the corporate travel segment. And in fact, Make My Trip came up with this post pandemic to cater to business travels. Before that, it was largely a business to customers platform. As we know, you've done a podcast with Mr. Maga before, and he was the one who shared that. And this platform has been performing great.
Yes, I mean, you can see how there are so many releases coming out of Make My Trip talking about my biz, and their strategic focus towards corporate travel. Thank you, Bulbul, for joining us today. It was great talking to you and doing a sort of a recap of whatever we have written in the past few weeks. And of course, through this discussion, we know that India's travel landscape is evolving, and it's evolving at a very rapid pace, and it's driven by strategic expansion, shifting market dynamics, and of course the growth prospects. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. It has been a great discussion, and yes, I completely agree with you. India is doing quite well, and when it comes to tourism, and it's an exciting time to be a part of the industry.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed this conversation, Bulbul, and I think we should be doing this more often. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Skift India Travel Podcast. As you know, we've been covering India extensively at Skift. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the emerging trends shaping the Indian travel and hospitality. Thank you so much.
This has been the Skift India Travel Podcast. Thank you for listening.